Good evening and welcome to КьюАй, which tonight features Jack and Jill and indeed John, James, Johannes or anybody else whose name begins with J. Let's meet every man Jack of them. Jack the lad, Sue Perkins. Jack the giant killer, Katy Brand. Mad Jack McMad, winner of last year's Mr. Madman competition, David Mitchell. And someone who doesn't know Jack, it's Alan Davies. So, buzzer-wise, let's hear it for the girls. Katy goes...
Jolene, 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 Jolene.
I worship that woman. Sue goes...
Gene Gene lives on his back.
Yeah.
The Gene Gene.
Happy with that?
Good. David goes... Oh, and Alan goes... now do you know? That's the theme for Top Gear. Top Gear. And what's the name of that piece of music? It's hard to think that the most testosterone-driven programme in television history is introduced by Jessica. That's the name of that song. It's Jessica by the Allman Brothers. And that's the most interesting fact in the world. So, don't forget, we're looking for names beginning with J. Who dies if they don't have sex for a year?
Oh, is it Russell Brand? Yeah, you were.
He so doesn't begin with a J. Jo Brand does, but she may die.
No, it's 2 years before Jo Brand dies.
Yeah, exactly.
I suspect it's not a human.
Correctly Correctington.
It's something...
An animal with...
It is from the animal.
I actually conducted an experiment many years ago to see if you could survive a year around. And I'm happy to tell you that, yes, you can.
I was worried your experiment was going to be that you'd had sex with a variety of animals.
It wasn't clear to me that it was you. It sounded to me like you had someone in a room locked up for a year just to see if they would die without sex.
They were the control.
They were the control. Yeah.
Well, you were freely roaming.
Yes. Yeah. And as it turned out, neither of us had sex.
Could you not have saved each other by having sex with one another?
I think if you put someone in a room and then you have sex with them, that's a crime.
So it's an animal and it's going to begin with J.
Well, yes, though the species of animal doesn't begin with J.
Right.
It's just the particular gender begins with a J. It's a furry mammal, often kept as a pet. Okay. And the male...
Dog, rabbit, hamster, gerbil.
Cat.
You were with the
gerbil.
Guinea pig.
Closer with gerbil.
Is it...
A ferret.
A ferret.
Ferret.
Now, what's a male ferret called?
Jeff.
You might be. They begin with H. They're called a hob.
A hob?
But a female is
Is
called
it
a...
Jenny?
Not a Jenny, but it might as well be, almost.
A Julia.
Jennifer?
No.
A June. Judy.
Jolene, Jolene.
It's not Jolene. That would be so pleasing.
Jane.
No, it's a Jill.
How do we not get Jill?
A hob and a Jill. Who knows why these...
Hob and a Jill.
Yeah, these are medieval
go.
assignations. It's extraordinary, isn't
Sounds
it?
like a dance.
And what happens on...
Well-
is it literally on day 365 they just explode?
Well, in
Leap year! Come on!
in midsummer, they become estrus. They're on heat.
Right.
The poor Jill, the poor female ferret...
Jill Ferret.
Jill Ferret, yeah. And if she doesn't have sex, she carries on producing estrogen. She gets aplastic anemia and dies.
So she
she's gotta
basically
have sex.
boils to death of heat.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, so
And
what
gets
you have to do
tiny.
if you have a pet female ferret is either spay her...
That's what I was going to say.
Treat Peter,
It will be the
Trina.
ultimate sacrifice. Find a hob for her.
Find a hob for you.
And then cook her on the...
You can give injections. You can give
It's
injections.
easier to have sex with them, really.
Yeah.
It's going to take away some of the pride in the conquest from the male ferret, you know, towards the end of the summer.
The male ferret is very ferocious. They have a hooked penis.
Yes, do they have a bone in there?
They don't like a badger. It's a good thing.
Or a
It's a
bear.
hook, really. So it's up to the male then to unhook himself when he's satisfied. He also bites the back of the neck of
Sounds
the female.
like fun.
Sounds like Russell Brand.
Come here, love.
So, yeah, there's your ferret. And it comes from the Latin feruta, which means...
Have sex with me or die.
It means, actually, little thief. Yeah, they're always nicking things.
That ferret looks very sweet there and doesn't look like the sort of ferret that would hook
barbed.
you with a bone in its penis.
And
But that's how they get you in,
bite
isn't
the back
it?
of your neck.
Yeah.
Well, they
Exactly.
get you with the eyes, the
They
soft
look-
eyes.
Yeah, they look so
Then
lovable.
comes the boomerang cock. Apparently flatworms fight with their penises like swords.
Really?
And the one that loses gets stabbed and becomes a girl.
Brilliant system.
So they do these fights. They both got penises. Fight, 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 fight. Ah! And it's like fencing. But when the rapier goes in, it becomes a lady and has to give birth.
But that's win-win for the victorious one because they win and then they get to have a shag
Yeah.
Yeah.
with the newly formed female.
Whereas the
in-
loser gets hurt and then suddenly develops breasts.
and violated.
feels violated and then has a baby.
Let's not get all women's lib about
Yeah,
this.
let's leave that.
Anyway, what made Mad Jack so mad?
Something he ate, I expect.
Well, that's
You've been on
obviously-
holiday.
That's a Mad Jack. That's a very familiar...
People are always eating things. Or there's stuff in paint, that makes you mad, doesn't it?
But it's really, where's the phrase Mad Jack come from?
The
Why
original Mad Jack.
The original Mad Jack, they go back quite a long way. It's basically applied to anybody, whether they're named John or Jack or not. They're just called Mad Jack. And no
Who was
one
the
quite
who was
knows
the
why.
first Mad
Very
Jack?
hard to trace, very hard to trace. There was Mad Jack Mitten, who was a very eccentric aristocrat who paid £10 to 1,000 of the constituents of Shrewsbury for their vote, which is the equivalent of £750,000 in today's money. That was in 1819, and he was elected to be the member for Shrewsbury.
Sounds broadly similar to our current system.
Yes, it does, Rob, doesn't it? And also similar to our current system is he found debating incredibly boring. He only attended one session of Parliament for 30 minutes, having paid £750,000 for the privilege, and then stood down in the next year, 1820.
It's a hobby.
If you're an aristocrat, you're eccentric, aren't you? But
If you're poor, you're just mad
just
and
mad,
you're a loony.
and you're
I know,
in
that
an
is
asylum.
basically. Though he did end his days in a debtor's prison, he lost all his money. He once set fire to his nightshirt to cure his hiccups.
Probably, that would probably work, but it's not actually a shock, is it?
No, it's not.
If you can get someone else to do it at some moment that you're not expecting it, then that's a shock. Although
Very
then you could
disappointing.
end up in a sort of Clouseau-Cato scenario where it's impossible to explain to someone that it's no longer necessary for them to find a moment to set fire to your pyjamas.
you wake up in the Burns unit and go,
He also liked to get up in the middle of the night and shoot ducks while he was naked. Naked duck shooting.
Was there any reason for the nudity?
You probably thought they're naked, why shouldn't
Yeah.
I be?
Is it wrong to be sort of starting to slightly fall in love with this man?
I know what you mean. You might fall in love with Charles Howard, who was the 20th Earl of Suffolk. And during the war, he went into Nazi-occupied Paris and he rescued $10 million worth of industrial diamonds and all the heavy water that the Germans had. But he also managed to bring back 50 nuclear scientists from Paris. This is all during the time the Nazis were occupying. So he was described by Harold Macmillan as a kind of cross between Francis Drake and the Scarlet Pimpernel. He was a very brave man, and he then trained himself to be able to defuse bombs and had his own bomb disposal unit, which was his secretary, Eileen, and his chauffeur, Fred.
You think he trained himself? That's quite hard.
Yeah, well,
There's only one way to go if you get it wrong.
Yeah, well, he did unfortunately get it wrong on his, I think, his 35th bomb, age 34 or 5 or something. So he was a good Mad Jack. There was Mad Jack Churchill as well in the Second World War. And he was the only soldier known to have gone into battle in the Second World War, armed with what weapon of choice?
Teapot.
A dessert spoon.
Sorry, cosy. Tea cosy.
Tea cosy.
A cheese slicer.
A bow and arrow.
Did he know what decade or even what century he was in?
He was a gallant, chivalrous man.
Marvellous stuff.
And also he would have a sword on the battlefield.
That's even stupider, isn't it? Because if you've got a bow and arrow, you can't use a sword at the same time.
He thought that no gentleman was properly dressed for battle unless they had a sword. And he also said that if you smile at the enemy, they're less likely to shoot you. And he was...
I wonder how he died.
No, he was taken prisoner, in fact.
He was so charming. Devastating man. Lovely smile.
He was actually housed at Sachsenhausen, which was the VIP prison camp, because the Germans mistakenly thought he was related to Winston Churchill, which he wasn't. Mad Jack Churchill. Anyway, Mad Jack Churchill didn't die till 1996, so he had a more fortunate life than Charles Howard, 20th Earl of Suffolk. But there's a load of Jacks. But how did Queen Jenga arrange her harem?
And then that. 3 rows that way, and then 3 rows
You're being so kind. She was quite a piece of work, Queen
Bow and
Jenga.
arrow and sword.
And sword, exactly.
I didn't think of the bells, though.
No, the bells.
That would have clinched it for
That
him.
really would have been a good...
That's just to make people look up. Ding, ding, ding.
She was a 17th century member of the royal family of... well, she killed her brother, who was called Ngola, after which the country Angola is named. Supposedly her nephew as well, and ate his heart. And she liked men to fight each other to death, and the winner would sleep with her for the night and then be killed in the morning. So she
What's the incentive to then to enter the competition?
Well, you're killed either way, so whether you killed and get a shag or you're killed without
But what kind of shag would you have when you know at the end of it you're going to get murdered? I mean, that is one tense coitus.
I think Mr. Tiggy would probably be a bit shrivelly, wouldn't he?
Yes, Mr. Tinky Woods.
Is that not a universal name? Is that Oh, my goodness.
Too much Mr. Tiggy information.
There must be the promise of a reprieve.
Well, you'd think if you were really, really
You
good.
will really please me.
Yeah.
I will not kill you with my bells. Or my sword or my big bag.
Yeah.
What's the bell for? Is that to just give somebody tinnitus before they're eviscerated or something?
Room service.
She was not a... She was not a...
You rang.
She was not a kindly soul, it must be said. But what of the game Jenga? What do we know of its origins?
I want to say
Scandinavian.
Scandinavian. Is it
It
Scandinavian?
does mean something. It's a Swahili word,
Oh,
so
Swahili.
it is African. In fact, it's from the
Swahili for
mean-
timber.
Actually, the reverse. It's the Swahili for to build. And it was invented by a woman called Leslie Scott, and she's still with us, I think. So it is pretty recent.
You can always get giant versions of it. We had a giant one, and
Right.
we thought it'd be a great thing to have at a party with lots of toddlers around, but actually 3 or 4 of them got quite severely injured. Yeah, because you build them up and you say, oh, the kids they'll like that. And you wander off and have a glass of Pimm's, and suddenly there's sort of...
Blood everywhere.
Slaughter. Infanticide.
One underneath a lot of... Where's Timmy? I don't know. He's under the Jenga.
That's an extremely middle-class form of neglect.
Yes.
Crushed by the Jenga.
Jenga.
Yeah. I've never liked Jenga.
Yes, why does it have to be plain wood? It makes it look like it was invented at the time of Boudicca.
Yeah, make it...
It could be colourful wood.
There are versions with coloured wood. There are adult truth or dare versions. There are rolling dice versions. People have tried all kinds of variations.
What about a Lego version? And then, you know...
You try and get one out. It would not be easy.
No, well, it's just you can play it with cement and bricks.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
you're just building a house.
Just construction.
Gold bars!
The only limit is your imagination.
Surely that's not Jenga's slogan, is it? I'd say there are severe limits within even my limited imagination.
I think their slogan is, this summer, logs will fall.
Are the children safe?
How many...
Oh my God, yeah, it's like the sort of borrowers in the...
How many pieces are there?
90.
Too many.
I mean, what?
90.
No, it's got
That's
to be a
not
number
nice.
that's
200?
divisible by 3.
Intelligence.
Well,
That's
90
nice to
is a
hear.
number.
Alan is divisible by
333.
I said 90.
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's true. That is
Yes, yes.
damn. Hoist by my own petard.
Are they not 90
No,
then?
they're not. They're 54. In fact, 18 rows.
That's
A
not...
triple 18. That's
Yes.
quite good with
No,
threes because of the
54.
dartboard.
54 also divisible by 3. Yeah. You can tell whether a number's divisible by 3 if you add up, like 54, you add the 5 and the 4, and
yes.
if that's divisible by 3, the number's divisible by 3.
Oh,
Very true.
where were you when I was 7? Yeah.
I mean, if it's divisible by 9, you add up the numbers and they add up to 9. 81, 72,
God.
54 again.
Does it work over 100?
Yeah, always that. 9s are freakish. They're fantastic.
It can't be.
Great. Well, you add up the digits, yeah, until you come to a
Until
single number.
108,
Right.
117, 126, 135, 144,
Yep.
153.
All add up to 9.
All working. 162. How long have we got?
Yeah.
Lost me, I'm afraid.
180, yeah.
Yeah.
It is amazing, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's really just cool. Wow. Maybe God's a
Up to
mathematician.
180, and then 189.
Yeah, is 17
Is still-
plus 1, which is 18, and 8 and 1 is 9.
Oh, you get that?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
you
right.
do that.
Still
When they-
reduces down to
Keep
9.
going,
That's right,
there.
until you
Oh.
get it down to a single number.
I don't want to cry or wet myself with excitement. I'm going to do both.
I always do that.
Exciting news for nine lovers. Describe the best ever game of royal hide and seek.
Well, I presume a Hampton Court maze is involved.
Well, no, actually, that's just sort of giving an
Oh,
example.
no, up the tree.
That's certainly,
Royal Oak.
That was pretty good. That was. I mean, he hid.
The princes in the tower, and they hid so well that it was hundreds of years, and then they were skeletons.
Is it any game of hide and seek in which you never find Prince Edward again?
No. No. So we're in the world of Jays. Now, it's the Civil War. Charles I.
John.
No, Charles I had 2 sons.
It's a James.
There
James.
was Charles, who became Charles II,
And James.
and James, who became...
James
James
the
is-
First.
No.
James II.
Second.
It makes sense, because the second was their surname, and they were brothers.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like the boys from the band Blue. There's Duncan from Blue and there's Simon from Blue.
Yeah,
They're all
yeah.
related to
Charles
Charles,
the
aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, James was imprisoned at St James's Palace, named not after him, but the saint.
Oh, what an
obviously.
ordeal.
Yeah, no. He used to play hide and seek, and he was so good at it that the servants would spend hours looking for him.
Oh,
and
they wouldn't look for him at all. He'd be hiding and they
Yeah.
go and have lunch.
it
Am
was,
I the best hide and seek? Yes.
but
Oh, we couldn't find you, sir.
it was all part of his plan, because one day he managed to get hold of the gardener's key, and while playing hide and seek, he actually escaped from the palace and met up with a Colonel Blampstead, or some similar name, who was a royalist, as you would be if you were called Blampstead. Oh, Blampstead! Blampstead! And he escaped to Holland, where he lived a happy life. It was actually Bampfield, not Blampstead. But still, Bampfield was clearly a royalist.
So are you saying the hide and seek prowess was sort of all part of the strategy, or that
Yeah,
was just a
preparing
happy...
himself for an escape.
Oh, I see.
At the age
Like
of 12.
the Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah,
Yes.
except he was 12, which is quite
was
impressive.
12?
He was a 12-year-old boy, so it's quite
He was
impressive.
only 12.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
How did he come into contact with Major Blamford?
I guess secret messages were passed in some way. didn't they?
We dread to think now I know he's
Careful as
12.
a 12-year-old boy running away and going off with a random colonel.
To Amsterdam.
Can't be sure he might be a royalist or...
He might not be.
Especially to Amsterdam, yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
Come with me, it's going to be such fun.
The irony is...
No, really, I am seriously a colonel.
The saddest story of hide and seek that you can think of, although it has a kind of happy ending, is Liu Wei, a Chinese pianist who was playing hide and seek, and he electrocuted himself, and so badly that he lost both his arms. So he learnt to play the piano with his toes. And in 2010, he won China's Got Talent. Which is rather pleasing.
So he can play, and all of his toes work.
All of his toes, they look like fingers. It's actually astonishing. It's really amazing.
Are you sure he just hasn't got his head in the wrong place?
He's got his hands down a pair of trousers.
It's-
Look at my toes, look at my toes. I take my socks off. play the piano with my toes, everyone.
He's saying he's a man who can play the piano with his feet. He's a man with a penis that looks like a face.
Still, he wins China's Got Talent.
Yes, yeah, but it's just...
I'm sure Simon Cowell would have checked out these credentials in every respect. So, while on the subject of King James's, imagine that Jamie Oliver was to be crowned the next King of England. It's sort of... Not inconceivable in the strange world in which we live.
President Oliver.
What number James would he be? What would be his regnal number as the official?
Oh, no.
Well, it would be different in England from Scotland.
No, there's just one UK, so it would be the same in both. But what would it be?
I'm desperate to say James III. Yes!
No, because what happened was when Elizabeth was crowned 60 years ago, she was, of course, called Queen Elizabeth II. But in Scotland, there was a bit of an outcry because she wasn't the second Queen Elizabeth in Scotland, she was the first. They had Mary, Queen of Scots, when Elizabeth I was on the throne. So a few early E2R pillar boxes were trashed in Scotland. There was a big fuss. And Winston Churchill, who was Prime Minister in 1953, he sort of decided that
350 years
I know, people, let's long memories on these things. So Churchill essentially laid down a convention whereby UK monarchs would be numbered uniformly according to either an English or Scottish reckoning, whichever was higher. So James I of England was James the Sixth of Scotland. So James II was James VII. So if there were another James, he would be called James VIII. That would be the procedure.
I worry when you say things like this that you're the only person who knows. If Jamie Oliver did become king and you weren't around to tell them, they might get it wrong.
Sweet.
What are you going to... You need to leave these things in a notebook.
You need to get some tablets for you to do.
Princess Anne looks a lot like my daughter in that picture, quite disturbingly.
Gosh! She's very young there, isn't she?
I feel sorry for all the other finalists to be queen.
There is also unresolved controversy over the naming of the QE2. Do you know what this might be?
Well, I've always wondered. I wasn't never sure whether the QE2 was named after Queen Elizabeth II or was the second ship called Queen Elizabeth.
Yes.
Because there's a Queen Mary too.
Exactly. It's the second vessel of the Cunard line to be called Queen Mary. And opinion is divided, but a lot of people think it was literally just the second ship to be called Queen Elizabeth. But the Queen herself, when launching it, saying, I named it ship Queen Elizabeth II. So Cunard had to rename it, basically, because she'd done it. I was once invited to the launching of a Swan Hellenic cruise liner, and they said, so you say your speech, and then you hand over to Dame Kiri to Kanawa, who will do the launching. I said, I'm not going to do the launching. She said, you can't launch a ship. You know, you're a man. Did you know that men couldn't launch?
No. So only women can launch ships?
Yes, because I think it was Edward VII or someone launched the Lusitania and the Titanic, and marine people are quite superstitious.
And women moan about the glass ceiling. we can't even launch ships.
We don't want top-level employment. We just want to smash a bottle of champagne against a ship.
Everyone wants to launch ships. It's the best job.
It's just that.
Yeah. You've got to say, I named this ship.
Yeah.
Barry. Barry.
Smash. Yeah.
So, there is indeed controversy. Opinion is divided. How does the Siberian jay stick his nuts to a tree?
Snot, yeah.
It's saliva.
Beak mucus.
Saliva.
Tears.
He uses saliva.
Tears.
Did you know?
Oh, it's so cold here. Thank God my nuts have stuck.
90% of all the oaks in Britain are germinated, as it were, by the European jay. They collect over 1 billion a year and bury them in the ground. They can have 9 in their gullet and 1 in their beak.
Is it from whole acorns, or is it because they've eaten them and then...
Well, they hold them in their gullets and then they bury them in the same way that squirrels do with nuts
I
and
see.
so on. But anyway, the point is the Siberian jay lives in very cold climate, of course, and it's harder to bury things because of the impacted ice. And so it sticks the nuts it gets from its trees with its saliva to the tree itself.
Does that mean you get trees growing off trees?
It's like the sort of jay... I can imagine after a night out, it would be like the Siberian jay version of a street of kebab shops. They can just fly down an avenue of trees.
Yes.
Snacking.
On a
Each one.
snotty nut.
Yeah, on a snotty nut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably quite lucky, isn't it, that nothing germinates from a discarded kebab. Our city centres would be even worse. These little disgusting saplings. Doner meat.
Oh, it's a very Dr. Who. Anyway, how did the first person to realise they were colourblind know they were colourblind?
Did they say, the red shoots of spring?
that would, someone would have corrected them.
I'm giving a green light to a bull.
Yeah.
Well, do you know the name for the classic sort of colourblindness?
I know the guy who it was, a guy called John Dalton.
That's right, John Dalton. Well done. Points, definitely. There he is. He was a very brilliant and precocious child from a Quaker family. And by the age of 12, he was supervising the school. But he made a rather drastic error, given that he was Quaker and therefore from a rather pious family, and then he decided to buy his mother a pair of bloomers, or they weren't bloomers in those days, a sort of pair of stockings, for her birthday. And they were a vivid red, and he thought they were blue. And she was shocked, because red was the colour of her whore. And to buy your mother red pants was just not done.
Buying your mother pants is normal. Red pants, that's weird.
But then the other thing is he noticed that his brother didn't tell the difference either, and so he made the connection, which is, holds true, that there is a genetic disposition towards colourblindness.
But he's the first person to point out it's genetic because his brother also has the condition. But this is obviously genetic. This is...
Oh, yes,
so this is
not genetic, but family, sort of related inheritance traits were understood. He actually thought the reason for it was that the liquid in the eye, which we all have, was tinted blue, which was making him see wrong. And when he died, he'd ordered that his eyeballs be dug out and squirted, and that instantly proved that they weren't tinted blue. We now know that it's a problem with the cones of the eye.
So is there red-blue colour blindness? I thought it was just red-green.
Red-green is, yes, but they see it as a kind of... I mean, I say they. I mean, there are lots of different types of colour blindness, and strangely enough, there are 4 top 20 snooker players, beg your pardon, Peter Ebdon there, of course, who are colourblind. And just occasionally they have to ask the referee which ball.
Green.
Which is the table and which is the ball.
Can't see anything.
Look, all the reds are over there.
He's ground his way to a world championship, so it's not done him any harm. You know traffic police play snooker, do you know about that? They're bored in a lay-by. They first have to book a red car, and that's one point. So they just chase the red car, find something wrong with it, go, give them a fine because they've got that one rear light missing, and then they can choose any colour. And they said they'd go for a black car for 7 points, but blue car would be 5 points, and then they go back to a red until they've done 15 reds.
Well, let's all get white cars. And then they can just.
To be fair, though.
I'd say worse things have been done in a lay-by than that.
Horribly true. Horribly true. But yes, that was Dalton's problem.
He's sure that his mother wasn't also colourblind, but just didn't like being bought pants by her child.
I think we're pretty certain about that. I think it was perhaps more normal to buy stockings, shall we say, for a lady.
Just stockings and suspenders or
Yeah.
something normal to buy your mother.
The little frilly.
A French little tunic.
Everyone likes their mother to look sexy.
Sexy blue, not red, because that makes it look a bit hoary.
That's going too far.
David, and Summers vouchers again.
A big drawer full of Ann Summers vouchers.
So, what do you know?
Another agent provocateur Christmas.
What do you know of the colourblind test cards? What are you seeing on there? Can you?
number 74.
Very, very clear. Well done. All got that.
I can see it, but not very clearly.
So, what does it mean they can't become? If
Pilots?
Well, no, oddly enough.
Snooker players.
No. We know that they could be world champions.
Bullfighters.
No, actually, it's a myth that you can't become a pilot if you're colourblind. It's only if you're very severely colourblind, the worst kinds of colourblindness, that you're
Can't tell the difference
disallowed.
between the blue sky and the green.
Yeah, something like that.
And the grey tarmac.
Yeah, the very worst kind of colourblindness or blindness.
Anyway, they're called the Ishihara tests, devised by Shinobu Ishihara, who worked at the military medical school and was asked to screen military recruits for abnormalities of colour vision. The first plate, that's an orange number 12, which is, I'm sure you can see that. This was used in the army to weed out draft dodgers, because if they pretended they couldn't see that it was a 12, they knew they were lying, because everyone who can see that that's a 12. There's no kind of colour blindness that can mistake those two. So that was
And I
rather...
was feeling proud of being able to see it.
But don't despair if you're colourblind. There is one advantage you might have. Can you think of what that would be?
Ration books?
No,
Something with colour
no,
that's
it's
good?
you're less likely to be fooled by camouflage. Because the tamarind, the New World monkey, that's colourblind, and the tamarind is much, much better at eating insects that are disguised as leaves or twigs or whatever than other mammals or birds who eat insects, because they rely on colour more for identifying things. So colourblind people were used often for spotting, you know... look, I can see the tank's covered in a drape there, for example. What begins with J and was used by the first man to row the Atlantic to attempt suicide?
Jizz.
Suicide by jizz.
Just on any level. I mean,
Jill the ferret had just had sex star for 364 days. Attacked him in an erotic frenzy.
yeah,
Jellyfish.
That's
something that
they do
really
begin with
are in the sea.
You're right. It's slightly confusing. This happened to be the first man to row the Atlantic single-handed.
It wasn't while he was on the boat.
No. He was very extraordinary. As a child, he nicked a pistol from his scout troop leader and fired at his fellow scouts and was expelled from the scouting
I've got a
movement.
badge for it.
But then, aged 13, he ran away from home to live in the jungle. And then in his early 20s, he met a pirate who taught him to be a pirate. And he pirated his way around the Caribbean, smuggling liquor and cigarettes and things. And then in 1969, January the 20th, he pushed off from the Canary Islands in a self-righting rowing boat and rowed all the way to Florida. It took him 180 days, and he was the first person to do that. But it was when he was in the jungle in South America that he despaired of his life, and so he wanted to be killed by something beginning with J.
Oh, is it a jaguar?
Is the right answer a jaguar? Exactly.
So what did he do? Did he go out in a meat skirt and a meat helmet and just wait there in the middle of the jungle waiting
Well, in a
for
sense,
No, he just
We're
wound them
human.
up all night, like teasing them and taunting them.
You look a bit like a cougar, no one could tell the difference. You're a panther.
But the awful thing is, he kept a gun by his side in case he changed his mind, and as the jaguar attacked, he did change his mind and shot it dead, and then sold its skin.
right.
So it was a bit, frankly, unfair on the
So
jaguar.
he didn't die?
So he was just lying.
But
He was
no,
basically lying.
But he really wanted to end his life, so he went out and
Well, he had a
basically
gun.
aggravated. Yeah, I
You also had
know.
a spear.
I know. If he'd really
I
meant
just don't
it,
believe this bloke. I'm sorry.
I don't know how to kill myself, so I'm going to wait here for a big cat to arrive.
Sit here winding up jaguars for days.
Yeah, I mean, he's just doing it for attention.
Yes, I think so. The J part of it is that his name is John Fairfax, and if you look up who, you know, the first person to row the Atlantic single-handed was, it was John. Johnny Fairfax. Yes, absolutely. Now, who's this? What are they doing? I thought it would be 10 times as exciting as a swing boat at the fair, but it wasn't. There was no sensation, just a lot of noise and wind. My hair was blown into a tangled mess, which couldn't be combed out for days.
The inventor of the hairdryer.
Is it Brian May on the latest Thorpe Park ride?
Well, we're with a transport experience, and this person was famous for their achievement in it, but the first time they tried it, as they say, they thought they found it horrible, noisy,
Amy
windy...
Johnson?
Amy Johnson is the right answer! Very good. There she is. It's the J. And what was her great feat?
She...
Flew the Atlantic.
Yeah.
No, that was
Flew
all
across America.
Cocker Brown. No, she flew from...
Flew to the moon.
Oh, she flew from Britain to Australia.
To Australia.
Yeah, it's a heck of a flight.
Did she ever come back?
Yes, she certainly did. And when she came back, she landed at what was then the sort of London airport, which was Croydon Airport, and there were 200,000 people there to meet her.
You're kidding.
No, it was a sensation of the age.
Was
And
there a car boot sale going on as well?
she had a 12-mile parade through London.
So she was describing when she first got into an aeroplane and first flew.
She hated it, absolutely hated it. But she stuck with it and became obviously incredibly good at it. So, yes, now then, talking of flight, I want you all to do a jolly jape now, which is make a dart, a paper dart, and see the person who can throw it the furthest wins.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
That's a piece of
There are various kinds you could do. Just try the type you did at school.
Forgotten how to do it.
And obviously, take your time as quickly as you can.
The thing is, I'm going to make one in the way we used to make them at school, knowing full well that they didn't fly very well.
Well, some people were good at it and some people weren't. Interesting to see how well you're doing.
Precision engineering.
Oops, I've made a hat.
I'm going to put little flaps on mine. Is that all right? And a
I
tail.
just
Help
had
yourself to
that
flaps.
idea.
You seem to be... who's David?
Done this
Have a go,
completely
as far
wrong.
as you can go.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Should you throw or should you cast like a bowler?
Ah, well,
is great.
it's up to you.
Look at that.
Yours looks
Yeah, that
great.
looks
absolutely.
very
Incredible.
It went up because of the flaps.
Yeah, your flaps.
Corrugated
Flaps
roof
gave it
tile.
lift.
Watch out in
It's
the back
one of
row.
those-
This is going to be lethal.
It's one of those stealth ones. You won't be able to see it. You won't be able to measure it.
Yeah.
You can buy it from Wick. It's got our name on it. Oh! A suicide plane.
That's impossible.
Pretty far.
Defies all laws
It
of
was
physics.
acrobatics.
Sue, your chance for glory.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, despite the brilliance of Amy Johnson, but would you be surprised to know that the paper aeroplane that goes the furthest looks like this? Stop.
Yeah, that's a bracelet.
I know, it seems hardly credible.
You just scrunch it up and chuck it.
Unfortunately, not very good at throwing it. I've practiced a bit. But the world record is 200 yards.
No way.
I'm not kidding you.
Straight down.
It's supposed to give it a twist, and that's what I'm not good at. I've never thrown in American football. That's what you've got to do, is do it in the style of an American football.
Whoa!
There you go. Not bad. Pretty good, isn't it? It was invented by a man called Mark Forty, whose father worked for NASA.
Oh, what a cheat.
Yeah, it's a short plastic cylinder, slightly weighted on the leading edge, and that's as simple as that. So you use sticky back plastic, which some purists would say doesn't make it a proper aeroplane, because it has to be slightly heavy at the front. You would not imagine that was so aerodynamic a shape as a dart, which just to our eyes looks right, doesn't it?
Is that the future of passenger
Darts. The future of
aeroplane?
darts.
I thought you said ducks. They're going to evolve into kind of cylindrical little beaks at the top.
Yeah, birds everywhere watching this programme. What have we been doing all this? All this? You should have just done that. Let's done that.
It was,
Just jumped. What are you doing?
but we were saying earlier about Amy Johnson. Almost gave up flying because it made such a mess of her hair. Can you remember who wrote the first dictionary in English?
Oh, yes. Johnson.
Samuel Johnson.
Samuel Johnson. It wasn't Samuel Johnson. I led you down the garden path.
Baldrick.
Banked you. Baldrick. Probably a B, yes.
Very good. We're going to have to write the whole dictionary tonight.
Dr. Johnson's dictionary, which was written in the earlier part of the 18th century, was preceded by, well, there was...
Famously, the first
There were lots,
dictionary.
weren't there?
There was a Richard Mulcaster in the 16th century who came up with the name football, in fact, and indeed invented refereeing and the idea of football teams. But he wrote Elementary in 1582. He was the first to gather all the words which we use in our English tongue out of all professions, as well learned as not, into one dictionary. But he didn't give definitions. He just listed all the words that he thought they existed.
But
In Robert Corddry's Table Alphabetical of 1604, not only listed words but gave definitions, so it was perhaps the first true dictionary in the sense that we know it. It listed around 3,000 hard words, as he called them, defining each one. So then Johnson's dictionary had how many entries? Around the time there were about 250,000 or 300,000 words. How many did he list?
42.
So, you were so close, 42,000. That was really close. 42,773. But we've got some Johnson words that have gone out of use. Maybe you can imagine what they mean. Tongue pad.
Mouth friend.
Mouth friend. Don't we all need a mouth friend?
Sometimes we certainly do need a tongue pad and a mouth.
Sometimes I like a frigorific.
I hear you, girl.
Frigorific.
Yeah, we've all been frigorific in our time. A double latte is, I
That's
think
a
it's
coffee.
a single shot,
you
isn't
can
it?
get those in.
It's depucillate.
Oh, that's what you do before a big
frigolate,
date,
yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
You're meeting a mouth friend.
Yes.
You get a bit tongue pad. Slip to the old shapesmith.
Is a shapesmith just a rubbish blacksmith?
No, a shapesmith is basically what we...
I've done a thing. You've been to the shapesmith, yeah. Sort of looks like a doorknob.
Yeah, it's not a horse shoe, but it's sort of horse jewellery. And
Like a horse clog.
Nipple clamp. They found in Camden Market and sold all that crap.
No, a shapesmith is actually what we would call a personal trainer. It's someone who gets you into shape and improves the shape of your body. It's
Time
a
for that
shapesmith.
word to come back. I think.
Shapesmith, exactly.
I'm going to see my shapesmith.
My shapesmith. A tongue pad.
I hate that.
A tongue pad is just a great talker who just gives someone who just natters all the time. A mouth friend is... No, someone who is a friend to your face but is duplicitous.
Oh, God, I know a few of those.
Yeah, a few mouth friends. Pretends to be your friend. To depucillate is to deflower, to bereave of virginity.
It's not a bereave.
To pluck the...
Let's not see it as that. Frigorific sounds like something Del Boy might say, but what is it?
It actually, I suppose we would... It's probably rather badly spelled. We should pronounce it, yes, cold. Should pronounce it frigorific, probably. It just means causing cold. Something that's frigorific. Causes cold. So, some of his definitions were just a little bit lazy. Sock. Something put between the foot and the shoe.
He must have thought, though, because, you know, previously the one before you say had been just of hard words. He must have just thought, look, everyone knows what a sock is.
If you can read, you'll know what a sock is.
Yeah, if you've got this book and you don't know what a sock is, then I can't help you.
Exactly. Oates was a famous one.
I guess he said horrible things about the Scots in his one on oats, didn't he?
He did. He said a grain which in England is generally given to horses, but in Scotland supports the people. He describes to Worm to deprive a dog of something, nobody knows what, under his tongue, which is said to prevent him, nobody knows why, from running mad. It's just a very strange...
Wasn't a scientist, then?
No, I think probably not. He's one of our greatest men of letters. Well, we've come to the Amen because it's time for the scores. It's all we've got time for. Let's see who's hit the jackpot. I'm afraid
died or Stephen's about to.
it's Sue who's died in last place with -12. It's a massive step up for Alan, third place with -7. And having been depucillated QI-wise, it's pretty impressive to break your virginity with -3, Katy. But, our mouth friend of the week, clear winner on +5, is David Mitchell. This is where we jack it all in and say that's all from Sue, David, Katy, Alan and me. Be excessively nice to each other. Good night.
Roll Up as Arena revisits the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour film next on BBC Two, followed by the film itself, a crazy slice of the 60s. That's at 11:15. And Mac is back again at 11:40, talking transatlantic success, how the Brits rocked America. Katy.